Sonala Amari is a 17-year-old youth activist who aspires to create meaningful and prosperous change in the climate movement and global agricultural food systems. She has founded Green Welfare Indonesia, Indonesia's first youth-led non-profit organization that primarily strives for environmental and social sustainability through advocating against unethical livestock farming and unsustainable agriculture with plant-based approaches and climate education. Recently, she was appointed as a project lead.
All right, so I think that's my cue. Thank you everyone for tuning in. It's an honor for me to be sharing in today's session. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the role of STEM in sustainable food system mainly. So just to give a little more background on what I do. So just like what Poppy explained earlier, I founded one of Indonesia's first youth-led organization that primarily focuses on sustainable agriculture, food security, food sovereignty. I'm using all of those by having a holistic approach through plant-based approaches, as well as veganism. So we advocate for a couple of things towards veganism and um, a more sustainable diet to achieve sustainable agriculture and food security. So just to give a little. All right. So first, I'd like to kind of start in touching on what is an agri-food system in general. Um, I personally believe that food systems are the key and the role in transforming, food security and truly achieving the uh, our sustainable development goal of zero hunger. And when we talk about agriculture, a lot of young people actually see it as a boring topic, but we have to understand that agriculture is actually the future of food and also the future of making and building more sustainable communities. Because then, back again, food systems are the key and the backbone of communities. But what we don't realize is that now, obviously, climate change has a really big impact to these agri-food systems, and we are eating and crawling towards more and more conventional, unsustainable agriculture systems that have been integrated for so long. And so it really needs big systematic changes for us to really change our current conventional agri-food system. So, of course, when we're talking about agri-food system, it covers the journey of the food from the farm to the table. So, when we want to create a sustainable food system, it's important that we think about how to implement a more sustainable practice from all of the journeys and from all of the processes that are being carried through, all the way from the food, all the way from the farm, and all the way how it reaches the table, how it reaches our markets, and also thinking about food loss and food waste is usually that usually happens throughout the processes. So the sustainable food system delivers food security and nutrition for all, but it also considering the economic, social, and environmental basis. Right now, the conventional agri-food system obviously doesn't really cover all of these three bases, which are really important when we want to talk about achieving any sustainable goal in general. So, what is the key to transform the agri-food systems? Of course, again, just like what I mentioned, the agri-food system needs a really big systematic changes and a whole efforts from um, every stakeholder in a certain country, and obviously every country has their own type of agri-food system, even though it's probably going to be similar to one another. Every nation has their own unique type of agri-food system, but the key to transform all of them is the same. First, we need to scale up climate resilience across food systems, integrate humanitarian and peace building development policies in conflicted areas. Third, strengthen economic resilience of the most vulnerable. Fourth, intervene along the food supply chain to lower the cost of nutritious food. This is something that is often talked about. The reason why we don't really achieve, uh, a sustainable agri-food system is because right now the conventional agri-food system only thinks about the quantity over the quality, which of course then it sums up on why now when we're talking about conventional agriculture, we only see how to grow as many crops as possible without really thinking about the quality of it, with taking more and more pesticides and chemicals to grow in more crops and thinking about the quantity over the quality of it. Fourth, what we also need is to pursue dietary patterns with low impact on health and the environment, and of course, to tackle structural inequalities to ensure interventions are proper and inclusive. So here, when we're talking about the agri-food systems, it's not that we don't lack some. It's not that we lack solutions. It's just that we haven't found the right way to fit all of these solutions together. So finding the STEM is farming is can be really obvious. STEM obviously, I think everyone here already knows what it stands for when we're talking about science. Let's say Midwest farmers, they're going to be planting crops. And one area that has seen a lot of science improvement in the seed that is planted, and scientists are constantly working to improve seeds to better withstand different weather conditions and overall improve yields. And again, now farmers do a number of scientific tests throughout the year to ensure all of their management and practices are optimal. So a couple of these tests includes things like soil samples, water quality samples, moisture testing harvested grain in the fall, feed particle size for livestock operations, and the list goes on. So we can obviously see, signs and experiments happening all over when we're talking about farming. And then technology, obviously, you can hardly open a farming magazine today without an article on new technology. Precision farming technologies are being used in much of the equipment today to auto steer equipment and attachment with increasing precision and accuracy, and to also vary the rate of seeds and fertilizer, send alerts or maybe messages to farm managers, and not to mention also drones are being used for crop scouting and monitoring farm areas more efficiently. Technology obviously has also increased for livestock operations with hardware and software to monitor everything from feed ordering to building maintenance issues. And so a number of farmers are also looking at installing solar panels around their operations for energy. So we can really see that technology will also be the future of food. And next, we're talking about engineering. Engineering is obviously, designing and building new or improved product or process. And farmers do this on a very regular basis. They may modify a toolbar to, let's say, better meet their needs, design a new grain leg, or modify a sprayer to plant cover crops. And farmers also documenting their processes and looking for ways to improve efficiency. Now, when we're talking about math is something that is definitely used to a daily basis, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a scientist, whether you're an office worker. Farming is a business, obviously, that also requires solid financials to remain competitive in today's environment. And in addition to financial performers, farmers are constantly doing mathematical calculations to determine everything from acres of coverage to bushels of grain. And so the future of STEM in agriculture is really, really seen and really important to integrate a more sustainable food system. And I think that with the obviousness of how STEM plays a huge role in farming, STEM can also create a lot of accessible and intersectional solutions towards fixing our broken conventional agriculture systems. For example, when we're talking about GMOs or even meat-based, lab-based meat, I think that is something that's very interesting personally for me. Me myself as a vegetarian myself, when we want to crave that natural instinct for meat, for meat, I think lab-based meat plays a huge role in the world of plant-based foods, and that's just one example on how we can eat more sustainably. Since livestock agriculture is one of the most biggest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, and then when we're talking about climate-safe agriculture, that is used as a way of farming, built to persist climate change. That's also how STEM plays a huge role. And young people have the role and have the key in innovating these solutions to our agricultural problems for today. And I think I do want to add also about how, when we're talking about STEM, it's also a it's a very big areas that can be covered. So we're talking about STEM in agriculture. It doesn't necessarily also have to only be about the farming process. It can also be about the pre and post part of the farming processes, about also thinking about how to rethink, let's say, to the transportation of farming. Transportation of farming is also contributing to a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, and STEM can play a huge role in innovating solutions on how we can fix, the small problems that goes throughout our conventional agricultural systems. So then again, there are so many examples that STEM can be a bridge to innovate our current conventional agriculture to a sustainable one. And I think young people have a huge role in this. And there are obviously a lot of um, young generations now also innovating more and more solutions, technology to agriculture systems. And again, I do want to close off that I think agriculture should be a very interesting topic for young people because, again, the future is food, and STEM is also has a very big play when we're talking about how we want to innovate the future of food for the global agricultural food system. So I think that is what I'm just going to be sharing for today. I think I'm going to move it back to the moderator, to Yara.